Welcome back to the last mobile phone review here for 2019. This is LG's G8X ThinQ, the dual screen edition here. So this one comes pre-packaged with the secondary case screen that really increases your productivity. So handy for those that are often, for example, in WhatsApp, but at the same time you like to be in Instagram or you like to watch movies, then this is really a great phone for that. You could say it's almost like a poor man's version of a foldable phone. Those ones can of course be really expensive when you take a look at the Samsung Galaxy Fold. Now this phone I've been using for the last week, and it is a loan unit from LG Spain, so that's a small disclaimer there, but all the opinions expressed in this review, like all of my videos, are 100% my own. So if you're unaware of the specs of the phone, you can find those now on the left of the screen here. In the box you'll find an 18-watt charger, so this is Qualcomm's Quick Charge 3. It will charge the phone in just over 1 hour and 20 minutes, the 4,000 milliamp hour battery. So if you buy the dual screen edition, of course it comes with that dual screen case, more on that just after this. And we do get some 3.5mm headphones. Now these ones actually do sound all right for free, well not free, but included in the box ones. Case as well, which offers decent protection. And then we do have an instruction leaflet, some spare ear tips, and the Pogo port connector here. So that's a Pogo port to then Type-C for the case. So let's first take a look at the secondary screen here that I think most people are going to be interested in. This is a really unique accessory that I want to see more manufacturers doing. So what we've got here is glass on the front. There is just a tiny little panel in here that can give us all of that on-screen information. And if you take a look at the inside and the hinge here, very good build quality. There is a cutout for the earpiece. This is the Type-C port down here. It is plastic. Now this weighs 139 grams, so it is adding quite a bit more bulk and weight to the phone. It makes a thickness then 15 millimeters. So the G8X here just simply slots in, clips into place, and we do have this gap on here, so we still are using the original power button right here. And when you plug it in, then you can then turn on that secondary screen and start to use it pretty much like just an individual separate phone right there. And that's what it's like, because you can run so many different applications, as you can see right there, in their own screen, which really does aid to multitasking. Now on the back of it, there is this big cutout here that is of course for the cameras and everything, and they let us see the name of it right there. Now this is plastic on the back here, the material. Will it survive drops? Well, probably the back will, but I do find that of course with the glass around here and the fact that it's quite close to the edge, I believe it will be very easy to break with this, but the overall build quality is good. Now on the left hand side we do have our hardware buttons here, so these are not just buttons that are connecting onto the original buttons on the phone, actually separate buttons that are part of the case right here. You can see down the bottom there's a cutout for 3.5mm headphone adapter, Pogo port connector for charging it, and then for our loudspeaker. Now this just runs off a magnet of course, the Pogo ports. You simply hold it up there and it connects into place. Very easy to remove, and I do like it that they've given us this option here, which is something a bit different, and you don't of course risk damaging the case or the port or anything. And then the phone's design, it's made out of Gorilla Glass front and back, and it's not bad. I like the fact that the cameras here, even though we've got just two of them, that's a 13 megapixel ultra wide, 12 megapixel main camera, we do have optical image stabilization with it, but they are flush as you can see, so there's no ridge, no ugly looking camera bump the way that it protrudes. And I hope going into 2020 more manufacturers can do this. They can just have the cameras within the rear glass and not protruding out, which tends to be a little bit ugly there. So along the bottom here we do have one of two loudspeakers. There's our Type-C port, mic, you can see an antenna line there, and a 3.5mm headphone jack that does have a quad DAC to it, which I'll get onto later on in this review. So on the right hand side here, we've got the power button. There's just another secondary mic there. And then up the top, there's our SIM tray. So this will take 2 nano SIMs or micro SD card and 1 nano SIM. So great to see in a flagship, just like Samsung, micro SD card support. So the earpiece at the top with our water drop, teardrop notch there does house a 32 megapixel camera that does pixel bin and takes images at 8 megapixels. And right now you can see the bezels, okay, they're not the slimmest that I have seen. I also wanted to demonstrate that the fingerprint reader then was not actually too bad, the speed of that. So here you can see those bezels, that, yeah, okay, top and bottom, they're not the slimmest that I have seen. Now this screen is an OLED panel here, okay, it's POLED, it's Full HD+, and the maximum brightness, it tops out to be a little disappointing, I feel, for a flagship. It's around 380 nits. but that's on the manual mode. If you set it to auto, then it will go up to 600 nits, which you can see perfectly fine in direct sunlight there. Now the images, I'll just quickly show you a couple of displayed images here. This is with Display Tester that I like to use, and you'll see that it's not a bad screen at all. The gamma will come out to be around about 2.0 here, so it's a little off. 2.1 or closer to 2.2 would have been more ideal. Just increase that brightness. So that banding you're seeing at the moment, that's just something that happens with my Sony camera with these OLED or AMOLED screens. So real world images, I'll just show you a few of those right now. You can see that those do come out good. That's a sharp display, a nice display, but is it as good as, for example, as the Samsung S10 Plus's display that I have? No. Now, if you're like me, you're probably wondering, why on earth do we have a teardrop water drop style notch on the secondary display if this here, right here, does not house a camera? Now, I actually put that question to LG. This was in Ether in Berlin when I was there in September, and they said it's purely for aesthetics. It's to keep it symmetrical, the look of it. And they found that when they just put this without it, that it looked a little strange, and that is why it's there. So we basically got the exact same display on the secondary display, and it is a quality display. It's just like the main one. Now I wanted to just point out a few things here too, that unfortunately, if we just go into our system here, just to point out that it's on Android 9, okay? It's not on Android 10, not yet. Hopefully that update's coming through. Now I've noticed here that you will sometimes see a little bit of stutter when using dual apps either side, and of course that's understandable, as I pointed out before. Now for memory, this one has 6 gigabytes of RAM, and in fact I think that's the only option. I don't think there's an 8 gigabyte option actually for this mobile here. You'll notice that the way it's laid out does look a little bit to me a lot like One UI's settings, so I don't know who's copying who. It's similar to Samsung, and the icon set UI is fine, but what I'm not particularly too fond of is this right here. So when you first get it, you're going to get a lot of these bloatware applications. Now they've got dual screen apps, which are in fact games from Gameloft. There's about 4 or 5 of them pre-installed, and a lot of other things in there too, like Booking.com and other bits and pieces. So hopefully they can just lighten out this ROM a little. It does to me seem a little bit over bloated. Now you see a little bit of even animation stutter here coming through then with that in the gallery, and I'm not too sure if that's because I'm running the dual screen, whether that means that the CPU is being taxed, of course, a little bit more. Probably that reason. Camera API level 3 support, so if you're not happy with the low light photos, then you can look for, of course, a Google Camera port. Netflix does work with full HD because we've got widevine level 1 support. Now this is an HDR screen as well, which is great. And here is our Antutu score. This is version 8, and that's pretty much on par with other Snapdragon 855s. It would have been nicer if they put the 855 Plus in there. That would have been, of course, about a 15% boost to our GPU performance. Now here's our wireless, very good wireless. Really, really fast here. Good range as well, and even the signal strength and quality I've found with 4G, also very good. I mean, take a look at these 4G speeds I managed to get right here. So we have 124 megabits per second download that I have not actually seen. This is from my house too, which normally has very poor signal. So that's 4G plus speeds. So that is great. And no problems again with the coverage there. GPS works well. You're going to get an accuracy of 3%, which is pretty much the norm for flagships with the Snapdragon 855 Plus. Battery life, very important. So this is just using a single screen, the main screen, of course, just the phone by itself without the secondary screen. I managed to get 8 hours, almost 9 hours on-screen time with my own test there. That only involved 7 minutes of voice calls. So most of the time, this was about 60% on wireless, 40% on data. It's just to give you an idea that it's pretty much similar to other Snapdragon 855 phones with a 4000 milliamp hour battery within it. Internal storage speeds, very good. This is UFS 2 spec, not 3, which I feel they could have possibly gone for, considering the timing of this phone. And that might have appealed to more people if they're gone with Snapdragon 855 Plus with the UFS 3 storage. That would make it the latest and greatest at the time it's released, that is. So there is an option here that we can use the secondary screen, as you can see now, as a touchpad, as a game controller, but a touchpad game controls. So what it's doing is just really emulating a hardware controller on games that support hardware controllers. This is Asphalt Legends here, by the way, which does support the controllers. And it's nice that LG have done this. They've given us this option. But to me, of course, it's not as good as the real thing, a proper hardware controller. It would be nice too if they did give us some triggers on the top here, just tiny little buttons Would have been nice on the case, but I guess that would have added to the cost of it, or just perhaps they couldn't do that. Now we do have different styles of controllers you can set here, so you can choose one that looks almost a little bit like something, say a PlayStation 4 there, or Xbox 360 style. You've got the option there for haptic feedback too, or a more traditional looking old style retro gamepad there as well. As mentioned, it's nice that we have this option, but I don't really see a lot of people using this. And then with demanding titles here like Call of Duty, the frame rate is a steady 60 frames per second most of the time for me here. So it's not the fastest Android GPU now, because we have the 855 Plus, which is an overclocked version of this. But still, the 855, the first edition right here, runs great, and it's only in synthetic benchmarks where you will see an actual difference between the two, not in gaming like this. Now holding it in landscape, I'm not noticing any issues with the wireless, I'm not creating any lag, and looking down the scope, very, very smooth, as expected. So all of those demanding Android games run great here on the G8X. So onto the audio quality here. So they still have their quad DAC here, which is great. A hi-fi quad DAC option comes up when you plug in anything that's 3.5 millimeters. So any wired audio, if you're a big fan still of wired audio like I am, then you get great output out of this. Now the maximum loudness I find to be lacking a little, considering it does have that quad DAC in here. So hopefully with software updates, LG can boost that. Now the loudspeakers, we have one down here on the bottom that handles the mids and the lows, and the top earpiece secondary speaker seems to be more highs and mids, but I'll give you a sample of it now. Just before I jump into our camera samples, let's take a look at the application. So you can see that opened up then with a little bit of an animation lag to it. So we just have two choices. It's just the main camera or the ultra wide. Now in daylight, very, very good photos, really good focus. Front-facing selfies, they're okay, perhaps not the best I have seen, but overall I like the cameras. Where I feel they are falling short a little bit happens to be their night mode. So in low light, these aren't the best. There's other manufacturers, other flagships that will do this better. But here are those camera samples, as well as some video samples too from the front and rear cameras. So the front-facing camera here is one of the few that does actually shoot in 4K, and we do have electronic image stabilization, as you can see, and it does work out well. Now there is a bit of a crop to the image, but overall at my arm's length here, I don't have to hold the phone, stretch it right out. So I think that this is pretty good quality we're getting here from the front-facing camera for your vlogs, and great to have this 4K option. So when you're shooting, you can swap over to the ultra-wide camera like so. And the electronic image stabilization here, this is 4K 30 frames per second, is very good. Now I'll go back to that main camera because that one's the best quality for video, that is. And overall, very pleased with this quality. The stabilization is really good. So overall, this is a really great phone. There's so much that I do like about it. We've got the quad DAC on there, very, very good wired audio output from this. Good cameras. I mean, the ultra wide, I think, is very, very similar to the Samsung Galaxy S10, that it does take a really good snap out of all the Android phones I've been reviewing. It happens to be one of the better ultra wides. Main camera is very good. We've got that dual pixel face detection autofocus, so the focus just never fails. It's very, very good, not just relying on just face detection. So we've also got Then a build that is IP67 water resistant. We've got wireless charging on there, Qualcomm Quick Charge 4 support, although I feel the adapter should have been included in the box considering the price of this phone. And that's where we come to one of the cons as well. So the price of it, especially here in Europe, I think is overpriced. It should be more aggressively priced to be more competitive in the market here. Now, having the secondary dual screen is a great alternative, a great option to have for people that really are into their multitasking. So you can run WhatsApp on one side, Instagram on the other, all your social media, or be surfing the web on one. There's so many things you can do with it. And yes, it will take away from the battery life a little bit. In my calculations, it's around about 20 to 30% that you will lose using the secondary screen, and it's not quite as bright as the main screen. Now, the main screen brightness indoors right here, right now, it depends on where you are. On the auto setting will be at its brightest point, but in the manual setting I found it to be a slightly little bit less than I would like. I would like it to be a little bit brighter indoors as well without having to use auto. So that's just one area there. Now the other thing is the fingerprint reader for me, as I pointed out, it's a little slow. It doesn't always work 100% of the time. It works for me about 70 to 80% of the time, and I think for the price of this phone that's not really good enough. And then the UI. The UI's got a couple of things in there that I don't particularly agree with. For example, they need to really add proper full screen gestures. I know there is almost like a full screen, gesture mode they have for swiping on the bottom, the home button, but it needs to be like other manufacturers. That you completely lose those on-screen buttons and just be all gestures. And then, okay, it's got Android 9, should really be Android 10. They could have gone with a second camera on the back, a third one with the ultra wide, and then main camera, maybe perhaps a 2x or 3x optical zoom. Would have been great to have that on there. So there's another thing too with the UI, and that is there's no face unlocking. I don't really understand that move, considering the fact that fingerprint unlocking for me is a little slow. I would love to see, even though it's not that secure, at least face unlocking. Why is the option not there? And then bloatware comes with a lot of bloat. But apart from that, if you can get around those little cons there, this actually is a really good phone. It's just you can see why some people tend to skip LG nowadays because of the pricing and just some of those things I pointed out, which is really disappointing to see because LG used to be, at least in my eyes, very, very good, one of the top manufacturers, and hopefully they can really turn things around, push a little bit harder, give us a lot more in 2020 with their new G9, which I hope to get my hands on, and Mobile World Congress if it will be shown there. It should be. And then of course we'll have a Snapdragon 865, the newer chip on there. So there we go, that is the G8X, the dual screen edition here. So it's not going to be for everyone, it is still a good phone, but just be a bit aware of all those things I mentioned there. Thank you so much for watching the last mobile phone review of 2019, and I hope to see you back in the channel with the next up and coming reviews. Bye for now.